In today's episode, you'll be hearing from Dr. Tarah Doyle, a licensed psychologist and certified holistic psychotherapist. She'll be walking us through techniques around EFT tapping, including a small exercise. You're not going to want to miss this episode if you are looking for a less stressful, more calm, less overwhelming life. All right, welcome to another episode of Happy, Healthy, and Skeptical. We are your hosts, Jennifer Hobson and Christy Palermo. So I get to be, well, and I know Christy is also extremely excited, but I get to be very excited. And I may be a little bit biased, of course, because I invited really my best friend since I think I was 12 or 13. So there's a ton of bias around that. However, outside of the fact that she is my best friend, I get to introduce our community and our listeners to my best friend, Dr. Tarah Doyle. And I want to tell you a little bit about her. And then even, I know Christy is actually raising the roof, literally. I know you can't see us, but one of the things that we talk a lot about is our inner circle. And I think what's important always is who you choose, because it is your choice to include in your inner circle. And Tara has been a very important person to me because I've surrounded myself with people that are always learning, they're growing, they're open to having conversations, and they elevate you. And I think that Tara is definitely one of the people in my life, and I know in a lot of other people's lives, that elevate people. So what does Tara do? What does she not do is really the question. And so Dr. Tarah Doyle is a licensed psychologist. She is also a certified holistic psychotherapist and energy coach. She's a coach, and she takes a holistic approach to really helping her clients and focus on teaching really simple mind, body, energy techniques that really leave her clients feeling more grounded, more present, and more calm. She's been in business since 2020. I think a lot of businesses really came out of that chaotic time in life. And she currently offers one-to-one personal coaching. And we get to pick her brain and talk to her today about just a few of the things that she does. So I am very, very excited to introduce to you Dr. Tarah Doyle.
Well, thank you so much. That was lovely. Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So, Tara, can you tell our listeners a little bit about you, maybe not the specific bio that I've shared with them? What makes what you do different from the average bear, if you will?
Yeah, I think so. I really try to go into a more holistic realm when I'm working with clients. And I know you already mentioned that, but the reason I did that is because I have been on my own healing journey. And so I think, that does set me apart. And that's what really, I think, puts more of my heart into what I do, is that everything that I teach my clients have been things that I've accumulated for my own healing and evolution. So I sort of vet everything out myself first before sharing it with my clients.
I think that's important, and we've talked to other people that have built their businesses from maybe even trauma or their own personal experience, and I always find that the person that does that is always more connected to their purpose and their mission with what they're trying to accomplish. And there's no bullshit, right? They're not trying to just sell you a product. They're not just trying to sugarcoat, because they've walked the walk, right? You've been at a point in your life where you have felt your worst and said, all right, I need solutions. And sometimes, our traditional Western medicine unfortunately doesn't offer those. And we have to do a little bit of research on our own. So I think the way that you've experienced that and the way you share that with people is really powerful. So what I want to ask you as we get this started is, what do you think from your entire journey and your coaching side, your personal side, what do you believe is one of the most powerful tools in your toolbox that you have for people to help manage stress and maybe regulate some high challenging emotions?
Yeah, yeah. Nervous system regulation at the beginning is so important. And one of the most powerful tools that I found, and I found it early on in my journey, is EFT, also called the emotional freedom techniques, or just simply tapping. So, this is a mind body energy technique where you tap on a series of acupressure points on the face and body, leading the system to feeling more calm. These are the same pressure points that acupuncturists use. So instead of placing needles, we're just using our fingertips to gently tap on these areas that are along meridians or energy lines in the body. And again, leading us to the body being into this state of more balance and calm.
That's awesome. So, did you discover that first as a teaching technique or as a technique for you to apply to your own healing?
Like I said earlier, everything that I've done was first a self-help technique, and then I translate it into my client work. So this I found to help myself.
Gotcha.
At the beginning, I found it so difficult. When I was on my holistic journey, I learned about the benefits of meditation and how great and beneficial it is to meditate. And I, like so many other people, had such a hard time with it, right? So I found tapping and its simplicity and effectiveness to be, really powerful because I was doing something. The doing is the tapping piece.
Yeah.
I was doing something that was bringing my system into a more calm state, which is what I needed.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think Christy can probably relate to this too. For the people that usually are doing more than one thing and multitasking, or even the people that tend to believe they have that HD brain, and things kind of come in, meditation, especially at the beginning, can be very, very difficult. And we might be the type of people that want to physically create an action to then create that resting. And we've actually been really honored that we got to have you at one of our retreats. And what's interesting is when you shared this with us and I followed that tapping exercise, I had a physical response to it. And it wasn't something I was expecting, right? And for those listening, when she says tapping, she literally means taking a finger and tapping it against your skin. And what's crazy for me is I went almost into a shaking, kind of not a fit, but a shaking response. So clearly there's something in my body that's disrupted. And you guys have heard us talk about this before. I have a thyroid disease that has reared its ugly head once again in my life. So surprise, surprise, not really a surprise. There's something that's disrupted in my body. And I know Christy can probably relate of how her experience was when you came to visit us.
Yes, I was just remembering that. It was a little over a year ago that we were able to do it with you. And I had heard of tapping in the past, and I had tried to kind of do it on my own, but I don't think the people that I had heard doing it, some kind of podcast back in the day, I don't know, it must have been 10 years ago now, but they didn't really explain why. So I was like, why am I doing this? I had no idea. So it didn't make sense to me. But then once you explained what it's doing and calming your nervous system, and that it can be in place of like, or maybe not in place, but it's the same points of acupuncture, then I was like, oh, okay, now I understand. And because yes, I'm one of those people where I try to meditate and my mind's too busy. So people are like, well, say a mantra. I'm like, well, I don't know what that mantra, those words mean. So I have trouble repeating something and getting calm when I'm like, what am I even saying? So that physical act of, yes, just tap, 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 like say on my wrist, or tap, tap, tap above my eyebrows. I'm saying the things that you walked us through. I found it so meditative. And I was like, this is brilliant. I love the physical movement that automatically calms your mind, but of course, calms your physical body. And I think it's something that so many people can use. And I remember having this conversation with you too, asking if you do it with kids, because I think of kids being maybe perhaps nervous in a situation in social settings or in school fidgeting, and knowing that they can learn to calm themselves with just a finger, that nobody has to see that they're even doing it, and that they can have that tool in their toolbox. And I think that's so powerful for parents and kids and anybody. Anybody can use this, really. But to see that in one session, which, what was that, maybe a half an hour long that we did, and at the retreat, that was like everybody's favorite part was being able to do the tapping. Everybody. And I mean, we're all from all different walks of life, and everyone loved it.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that. I think that's why so many people really like tapping is because it works quickly. within just a few rounds of tapping, your first experience, and we'll have one today for your listeners, you really start to feel a shift already. So you can see how there's buy-in early on when you start to feel those physiological changes that you guys are both describing in your personal experience. And I'll just go a little bit, if it's okay, into a little bit more, even more. I'll nerd out a little, only a little bit, I promise, on the
Yeah,
science of
please.
it. Is
Yes,
that
please, please. We love the we love to nerd out the science behind it. We always want to understand the why and the how. So please.
Yeah, yeah, and from your podcast title, Happy, Healthy, Skeptical, we all have this like healthy dose of skepticism, and I do also. Um, and then there's another side of me that's a believer, and this is how I get down all these different rabbit holes of things. But energy psychology and tapping specifically is the most evidence-based form of energy psychology. There's been over 100 peer-reviewed studies, which is a pretty good number. And 51 or so, I think, if I'm remembering accurately, are randomized controlled trials, which is the gold standard in the scientific method here that we're looking at. So this really hopefully should give any skeptics that science to support that there's really something going on here. So when we're tapping on these points on the body, it's sending messages to the brain that it's safe. And fMRI studies, which is brain imaging studies, have shown that there's downregulation that happens in the amygdala. That's the area of your brain that governs fight or flight. So after a tapping session, that area of your brain is downregulated, leading to feeling more peaceful and calm. Another physiological response that we see through the studies that they've done is actually a decrease in the stress hormone cortisol. So after tapping, cortisol is reduced and significantly reduced in some cases, especially with group tapping. There's some sort of power in tapping in a group setting, which is really cool, a talk for another day. But that cortisol is decreased. So these are real physiological changes that they've studied and measured, right? So there's science to back this up. And just anecdotally, most people report feeling more relaxed and calm after a tapping session, which is really great. Again, and it's fast and simple.
Well, and I love how you explain it, right? It takes the kind of big picture and breaks it down into digestible, really anecdotes of understanding how and why. And I think you've actually touched on a couple of things that Christy and I have talked about before. We've talked about, living in that constant state of fight or flight and where we're getting inundated from all different parts of our life with cortisol, and that's the fight or flight chemical, right? And we're in this constant state of stress and we can't understand how, or we haven't been given the tools on how to regulate, and we're constantly feeling that that overwhelm. And it's hard to go, okay, well, maybe I'm not a person where I feel like typical therapy is right for me. It hasn't worked in the past, and meditation hasn't worked, and I've done the yoga, and I've done, the list of traditional solutions. And why don't I try something that's non-traditional, which you can actually do at any point in time, which I thought was great. Like Christy said, even for a child, if they're at school and they don't want to be seen and they're having a hard time, they can take at least 30 seconds to a minute and utilize the EFT tapping. And I think that's really important. And for me, right, there's always that like, ooh, it's kind of witchy. What are you talking about? You're just tapping on your forehead, tapping on your chest, like what's going on? But and now I'm not going to remember. I have to remember the book that you had given, my son when he was going through a challenging developmental time, partnering EFT and breath work, like if you can combine those two in your daily strategies, I truly believe, and you've said, the science part, the studies part, but I truly believe that you will just have a physical response and a more calm state of being throughout your life.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. So good. Simple to use. Anybody can do it. You can tap on yourself. You can tap on someone else. That's usually someone you have gotten permission. But
right.
but even with
Hey, can I tap on you? Is that okay?
yeah, like if you're trying to help someone out, or if you had like an elderly relative that couldn't physically do the movements, even
Mm-hmm.
just bringing your awareness and attention to the spots and doing a deep breath. So it's almost like in your mind's eye, you would do it. So there's
Mm-hmm.
sort of there's almost no way you can do this wrong, and there's no negative effects from it. So the
I
magic
was
is in
just gonna ask
tapping.
you that. I was like, what are the negatives around tapping? What could really happen?
There's no harm. There is no harm that can come. So there's really no wrong we can do here. You can't do it wrong. Today I'm going to share with you a technique that's really super simplified by taking the language out. So traditional EFT uses some language and some setup statements and talking, sort of internal dialogue at each of the points. But this technique that I'm going to use today is much more universal. There's no language involved. I'll walk you through it and I'll explain the
Okay.
points, but just trying to make things as simple as possible, because I've had clients that I've introduced this skill to, and they're like, well, I don't know what to say. I don't know what I should be saying. Christy was talking earlier about mantras she doesn't understand, and none of that's going to work because in the background, you've got that, the inner critic or the self doubt or the questioning happening. And we certainly don't want to reinforce that in any way. So
Yeah.
we want to make this as simple and easy as possible so that you have that experience to make you want to do it more. Because the more we do these types of things, these energy techniques, it's cumulative. So it works, sort of works positively in your system over time. The more you do it, the more benefit you gain. If you develop a daily practice, which is ideal, you'll start to feel that benefit over time because we've got a lot to come back from, right? We've got like that's, the stress buckets are overflowing and daily we add to it. So if we don't have a self-help skill to use to help bring us back to these states that we really want, which is our true nature, is to be peaceful and calm and joyful and loving, you
We're
know,
not supposed to be this stressed out.
no, we're not. So it's just, how do we keep coming back? How do we keep training our system to come back to these states? And this is the simplest one that I can think of. Pair with deep breathing, you can't go wrong.
Right. And I think I like what you said where you're saying you're training. It's creating the training, and it's like, I mean, I think Christy would agree. It's like, playing a broken record. However, we've talked about, cumulative, we've talked about consistency, we've talked about adding habits into a daily practice, but the important part is you don't have to sit there and tap for, 4 hours. That's not required, right? If you're trying to look at adding in a habit that will benefit you, right? You start with 3 minutes, you start with 5 minutes, and it'll build from there. But even when you're at your peak, things like this don't need to take a lot of time. However, what you're getting from it, I think the input is a lot less than the output, right? You're getting a whole lot more by adding that daily practice in, and you're training your brain to understand, all right, this is something I require to be in the state of mind that I want. And like you said, those buckets, not for nothing, but those buckets of stress are what lead to additional illness, right? If you're a person that, you struggle with low immunity, you're sick all the time, have you taken a look at what you're fueling your body? And then the next step of what the hell are you stressed about, right? Is there a way to eliminate that and really decrease it? So I want to ask you, I already know that you've used tapping on your personal journey. So, how do you include this with clients? Do clients typically go, "Hey, I just want to walk through EFT with you and have an EFT session," or is it one of the tools you help with your clients and you just add it in there?
Yeah, both is true. So what I'm finding is I'm bringing it in and I'm introducing this as a skill to my clients, and usually I do it in the first session or in one of the first sessions because I'm really all about making myself obsolete. I want to give my clients skills and tools so that they have confidence that they can manage the stressors of their life and they don't need to rely on an external support.
Yeah.
That said, please reach out for help when you need help. We all need help from time to time on our journeys. I myself work with different practitioners at different points in my journey. We all need help and support, right? So, but this is one that I like to teach early on so you have this as your go to. This starts to help regulate the nervous system and help you have this really tangible skill to use to come back to states of peace and calm. Again, over and over again, we have to train the system to come back here because if we've been experiencing chronic stress, which most of my clients have been, which most of people
Most people.
have been experiencing, we have to do this over and over again to establish these new habits or patterns of really feeling safe in our bodies and in the world. right? So actually, I've even taught this to people who didn't even end up being my clients in a consultation session because I feel so passionately that everyone should have tools to help to calm and regulate their nervous system. This information should be free, and sharing this stuff widely.
For sure. And I think that's important. When you find something that you believe in so passionately, you're willing to give it away for free, then there's a purpose behind that. And I think that's definitely important. And when I was listening to you earlier, you were talking about the inner critic, the self-doubt, and we talk about that. We talk about that a lot, right? And we talk about mindset. And even like you said, when you need help, you have to ask for it. We're both coaches. A coach needs a coach, right? Everyone needs someone else that can support them and kind of give them the tools that they need. So I'm excited because you already offered and to share with our listeners a quick tapping exercise. Chrissy and we've both been able to experience. I'm excited to do it again and to also say, I have to commit to myself that this was something I wanted to add in. And just like we've talked with goal setting, if you don't make a plan for it at the beginning and you don't plan when you're going to put it into your day, a lot of times it just gets forgotten. So what I would say is try it here, and Tara's going to walk us through that, but don't be afraid to try it again on your own.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And anytime we're adding something new and it can be help, I think you might have said this already, Jen, is adding it to something you already do. So when we're creating new habits, adding it to an established habit or something we already do can be extremely helpful in just sort of reinforcing this new thing. So again, it doesn't have to be anything groundbreaking or any length of time. It can be 5 minutes at the bookends of your day. I had a client who, after she learned tapping, she added it to her morning routine. She went outside every morning with her coffee and her dogs to let her dogs run around and do their business. She added tapping into that time. She was already outside anyway.
I
It
love
was
habit
just
stacking. Habit stacking is the
exactly,
best thing in the world. If you can
exactly.
effectively start to habit stack, and like you said, it doesn't have to be. We talked about this the other day. I hope that most of you every morning brush your teeth, right? And typically you're brushing your teeth in front of a mirror. Maybe you're doing something else, but that's the easiest place for you to start. And maybe it's not the tapping habit there, but if you're looking to habit stack, start there because you get up in the morning. It's usually the first thing you do. Well, once you put your toothbrush down, maybe you're tapping in front of the mirror. Maybe you're sitting down and tapping. So I love that someone has already habit stacked with this process.
And I'm
Yeah,
even thinking, which we'll get into it, and I know we keep saying that, you guys will hear this, we're gonna go through it. But you'll see how simple it is wherever you are. And I'm thinking just like when you arrive at work and sitting in your car, or arrive somewhere and you're like, I literally have 2 minutes, but you can take those 2 minutes and do this anywhere, which is so, so, so great. You don't need a yoga mat, you
absolutely.
don't need anything.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great idea, Christy, too, in the car, right? Or if you have a stressful commute to work, before you leave for a minute in your driveway, and then on the tail end of your commute, wherever you land when you're in your parking spot too, to just bring that system back to calm. So, or before you go into your house at the end of the day and do all of the cooking and the things at the end of the day that can also be stressful. It's just taking a few moments.
Well, I
So,
think part of it is identifying what are the stress triggers, right? For me, I've always had a level of social anxiety and in my past have used alcohol. Well, you have to change those and know, okay, these are my triggers. So what can I do instead of, the typical detrimental responses to these triggers?
absolutely. Yeah. Full disclosure, I am tapping underneath my table as we speak right now, and I often do this. There's a really easy spot to tap on your hand that's like hidden away. And, just to keep myself calm during our conversation so they don't talk too fast or, whatever to keep myself calm and balanced. I do this often in sessions with my clients as well so that I keep my system calm and regulated because we co regulate our systems together. So if I stay calm, you find this with pets, you'll find this with kids. If you keep yourself in system calm, you see that ripple effect in the people around you. So,
Thank you for
Awesome.
telling us. I love that you just told us that. I think that's so cool that you're tapping as we speak and telling everyone that even you who teaches it still uses it yourself in moments of conversation and or anywhere really that you can do it mid conversation. I think that's beautiful.
Tara, because you graciously offered, we're excited to experience this with our listeners and to have you walk us through an EFT tapping exercise.
okay, awesome. So I'll just go through the tapping points just to sort of instruct you on where the points are, and then I'll bring you through a guided experience of tapping for a couple of rounds. But at each tapping point, I'll sort of say the point, so you don't have to worry about remembering what the points are. And I think I had sent you, Jen, a diagram with the tapping points, if you want to share that with your
Yeah,
viewers.
we'll definitely share that with the listeners. So it'll be available in the show notes that you guys can access that after this,
Okay,
if
great.
you want to utilize this exercise.
Okay, great. So the first point is on the side of the hand. It's the side of the hand or the karate chop point. And so any of the tapping points, usually people are tapping with just 2 fingers, but personally, I like to tap with all 4 fingers on the side of my hand point, but that's just a personal preference. It doesn't matter. So on each of the tapping points, we're going to tap about 10 to 15 times and just gently tapping. You don't have to really rail on your body too hard. So just being gentle with yourself.
Right.
The next point is on the top of the head, right at your crown.
I always forget, should you always sit with both feet on the ground, or does that matter?
It doesn't matter a whole ton. Some people sit, some people stand, some people do it lying down if they're ill and in a bed somewhere. So that part doesn't really matter. You're going to feel that groundedness on the bottoms of your feet if you're sitting with your feet on the floor. The next point is at the eyebrow. So at the start of your eyebrow, that inner eyebrow point, and you can tap on one side or you can tap on both sides. That's just a personal preference. It's the same point on each side. So it doesn't matter which side you tap on. Again, just tapping gently on these areas on the face because we're pretty close to the eye. Moving to outside of your eye. Again, it's really close to the eye, so just be gentle. Then underneath the eye. Under the nose, where a mustache would be or is.
How quickly are you tapping, or what kind of speed do you use?
Yeah, it's whatever feels good. Not that doesn't matter a whole ton. Again, we're going to tap on the chin is the next point. We're going to tap about 10 to 15 times and just gentle tapping. And especially on the face, if you are a person who is highly sensitive, if you're a person who's highly sensitive, you can just touch and breathe instead of tapping. If you're feeling like you're getting like overwhelmed by tapping, okay? The next point is the collarbone point, and it's actually about an inch below. So if you find your collarbone, it's about an inch below and outside of that point. So the collarbone point's just underneath the collarbone. You're going to tap either on one side or on both sides. It doesn't matter. Again, whatever your preference here. And then the last point is on the side of the body, about 4 inches down from your underarm, on the side of the body where a bra band would be. And again, on the side of the body point, I tend to like to use my whole hand, but you could also just use the 2 fingers that you tap for the rest of the points. So those are the major tapping points that we use. There are other tapping points that I use at various times, but those are the ones we're going to stick to for today. And I'll just bring you now through an experience of tapping. So you can do this tapping with your eyes open or closed. So if you're in a place where you can close your eyes, if it's safe to close your eyes, you can go ahead and close your eyes now.
If you're driving, please stop.
If you're driving, I would say you could do some of the tapping points. I actually have tapped while I drive.
Drive. Okay.
While
Just keep
drive
the eyes
while
open. Keep the
while
eyes open.
driving, but maybe just bookmark that and come back to it later, so that you can have the full experience. So if it's safe to do so, close your eyes and just you can start to bring your awareness to your inner experience, to the inner environment. And I want you to bring a current stressor to mind, something in your life that's currently causing you stress. And once you have that stressor in mind, you're going to scan your body. Notice any areas in your body where you're experiencing that stress. Noticing without judgment what that sensation feels like. Is it tension or holding, tightness, stiffness, discomfort, or pain? Just notice and make a mental note. We're going to come back to this area later. So, keeping that stressor in mind, noticing those areas in your body, you're going to start tapping on the side of your hand point. We're going to tap 10 to 15 times on each point while continuing to breathe deeply. Top of the head, eyebrow, outside of your eye, under your eye, under your nose, chin, collarbone, side of body. We're going to stop here, and I like to put my hands at my heart center. We're just going to take 3 deep breaths in between rounds. Inhale, fill the belly, and exhale fully. Inhale, fill the belly. Exhale fully. Inhale, fill the belly. And exhale fully. Come back to the side of your hand point, tapping gently. Top of your head. Eyebrow. Outside of your eye. Under your eye. Under your nose. Chin. Collarbone. Side of body. And back to your heart center. And 3 big breaths here. Inhale, fill the belly. And exhale fully. Inhale. And exhale. One more nice deep breath. Inhale, fill the belly. And exhale fully. Relax your hands. Breathe normally and relax. And then we're going to rescan the body. Revisit those areas that you notice tension or tightness or holding or any sensation at the beginning of the practice, and just notice them now. Notice if they're the same or if they've shifted in any way. Perhaps you're feeling lighter or relaxed. Perhaps you're feeling more energized. Just notice without judgment. If you were practicing on your own at home, you could continue tapping and breathing in this way, but we'll stop here for today just to give you a little experience. But you could continue on that process you see, just tapping around, taking a pause to breathe, and then continuing tapping, and then periodically checking back in on that level of stress or overwhelm or whatever it was that you were feeling at the beginning of the practice. And then you just keep checking in with yourself and
Yeah.
go until it feels good. Go until you feel
I
good.
think I think at the very least, for a response, it allows you to be very into the moment, right? You're very, very aware of your body, very present with yourself. And at the very least, it'll put you into a very clear state of awareness of what's going on. And like you said, maybe even what's holding heavy in a certain part of your body. As always, it was a very calming experience for me. And I'm sure for Christy as well. But it's one of those things, it's so easy to do, yet so easy not to do. And choosing saying, okay, you know what, I need something, or I need an outlet, I need a support, and I have this exercise and this tool in my toolbox that I can easily utilize and say, you know what, I need to calm down. I need to really be present with myself, and I need to stop the outside or maybe even internal noise, right? We're pretty loud and talking to ourselves. So I think it's an amazing exercise, I guess you could call it, but just something that you have available to you without even having to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think I'm sure the listeners can hear it in our voices because I could hear it in yours, Jen. Like
Right?
it's just a shift in energy. And what our listeners don't know is that I have my 4-year-old daughter sitting on my lap, and so I was doing it with her and helping guide her. And she has a screen so she can see where to tap, and so she did it with us. But what I love is that it was only 3 rounds. You know, it's fairly quick that we could go
Yep.
through this and feel such a difference. And we've had a lot of illnesses in our house this past week, and so a lot of extra stress, than more stress than normal. So I know I felt it instantly. So to have this technique that I can use even personally for myself, it reminds me like, oh yeah, I need this every day, even if I'm sitting in the bathroom for 1 minute by myself doing it. It's so helpful and it's so immediate. So what do you think? What did you think of that? Sure, how it felt, and she said it felt good. So I love that my 4-year-old can experience this, and I can continue to do this with her. And even if she doesn't quite understand it, like her body is registering it and relaxing from it. So I think it's so cool.
That's awesome. So, Tara, if you have one more tip outside of EFT tapping, if someone is in a very challenging space, maybe thought space, or just a really hard time that's stressful, what do you use as most often your biggest tip that someone can maybe just listen to or know that they have to kind of deal and regulate?
Yeah, I think the basics are so important. And we often forget to do these simple things when we're really stressed or in the middle of something. But eating good, nourishing food, drinking plenty of water, getting good sleep, and moving your body in mindful ways. It just we cannot overemphasize how important these things are. You know, you feel the difference when you don't do them. So really just trying to stay consistent with doing those things. They're acts of self-care, they're acts of self-love. This is how we take excellent care of ourselves. So that
Mhm.
is something that I really try to address at the beginning of also working with clients, is because, you know, if you're eating a diet that's filled with processed foods and high caffeine and high sugar, that impacts you physiologically, which impacts your your mental functioning and your emotions. So everything is connected. So really just doing those basics, taking care of the mind and body together, are so important. Carving out time every day to practice some form of relaxation, whether that's meditation, whether it's 3 deep breaths, whether it's prayer or journaling, whatever it is for you, carve out some time for it. I know that this comes up so often. You guys have probably talked about this. The people who say they don't have time for it are the people who need it the most. So even if it's 5 minutes a day or 1 minute, hey, I'm not picky. I've had clients where we literally have started with 1 minute of practice a day. And I do call it a practice. Everything we do, breath work practice, meditation practice, mindfulness practice, tapping practice, is because we're always working on things. There's always something to work on. There's always improvement to be had, right? So we're just always all doing the best we can. And number one, I guess, would be reach out if you need help, if you need support. And there is no shame in that. We all need help from time to time. So find someone that you resonate with that can support you through whatever you're going through.
For anybody listening to this that maybe they're thinking, maybe I need to speak to someone, what type of clients do you work with? If that's the right question, I'm not sure if I'm wording that correctly. If it's before
Yeah,
we
yeah.
hop back
So,
into
so
it.
you're asking me what kind of clients that I work with. So I'm
Yeah.
working with people who are experiencing chronic stress and anxiety and just that general overwhelm in life, who are looking for ways, simple, easy ways that they can come back to calm and relax. And that looks different for all kinds of people, but essentially that's the bulk of it. That is the majority of my clients, is we're working toward coming into these altered states, these different states of being.
One needs a person like
Mhm.
even if they don't utilize you, to know there's a person that is available like you. And we will have the tapping exercise for our listeners. And I would love for you to share, Tara, if someone actually wants to connect with you, what is the best way for them to reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, they can find me on my website. So it's www.tarahdoyle.com. That's TARAHDOYLE.com. That's my website. You can contact me through email, through my website. You can see a little bit more about what I do, about some of these techniques, and what a session looks like is described on my website as well. And I'm hoping to, in the new year, have more events coming up on that website as well.
That's awesome. Events, like you said earlier, the power of people in the same space
Yeah.
always makes a difference. There's a reason that when you go to a football game at a stadium, there's a lot of energy. And I think events, and always in-person events, can bring the next level of being powerful or even energy healing. So I'm so glad that you exist and that you're my best friend and you
Oh.
took the time out to speak with us. I think it makes such a big impact to know there's other people that are always continuously learning and want to bring what they've learned to other people, right? I think there's the learning and then there's the sharing, and sharing is really important. So thank you for your time. And we are excited to share this episode with you and all of what Dr. Tarah Doyle does. And you can find her on her website. But tune in. You can follow us on Instagram at Happy Healthy Skeptical.